We had put Lindsay Verbal into place as an alternate. I think she should continue on. And the last trustee board made a recommendation of Tom Schrader. Tom was interviewed in December. Mr. Arline was not able to continue on. And so therefore we interviewed for that position and thought that Tom Schrader would be a good fit as an additional alternate to this board.
I would like to review, are there any notes of the interviews that happened or that we can bring back some of the candidates that interviewed? I'm not comfortable appointing someone that I've had no contact with.
Okay, that's fine. So what we would have to do is start the interview process again unless you wanted to review the resumes. We don't have any notes that were taken in that executive session.
Okay. I would be most comfortable with doing the interviews again.
Okay. So are you comfortable with appointing Ms. Rubel, or do you want to interview for both spots again?
I am comfortable with Ms. Rubel only because I have been regularly attending the zoning meetings. So I've witnessed her in meetings. So I am comfortable with that. I certainly understand if Mr. Sweattick is not.
I'm comfortable with it as well, yeah.
And she served for a year. Yeah, she's done a fantastic job. I think she's a great addition to that board. So at this time, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Lindsay Rubel as an alternate to the Zoning Commission for a term expiring 12/31/2022.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Very good. And we will have further conversation at the next trustee meeting about that position and advertising for it. Do you want to put it on your agenda or do you want me to put it on mine?
I can put it on, I can put it on my agenda.
Okay. And as I said to you before, Trustee Asher, and I don't know that we've had this conversation, Trustee Sweattick, we will get our agenda items to Ms. Peterlin by 12 o'clock on Friday for the following week's meeting.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Moving on, the Board of Zoning Appeals, the compensation I'm comfortable with, but we need to put this board together. And I have some concerns that I would like to address with you in executive session. So at this time, I'd like to make a motion to discuss personnel and appointments in executive session.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, we're going to move into executive session at 9:35 a.m. Oh, I did. All in favor, say aye.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Okay, can I get a roll call vote for that, please?
Sorry to speak up.
No, you're
I
fine.
used to be there.
I know, and I'm trying to navigate the resume room.
Asherle,
Yes.
Sweattick,
Yes.
Augustine.
Yes. Okay. We'll be right back. Yes.
Go ahead, you.
It's the same thing. That water comes out of there.
Okay.
Spalding.
This time, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn out of executive session and return to our special meeting at 9:51 a.m.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. So at this time, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Dave Zalesnik as a member to the the Board of Zoning Appeals for a term to expire 12/31/2026. Is that good math?
Second?
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We will have another member position open. So we will talk more about that at the next regular meeting. And that is Ms. Mainzer's position. And at this time, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Bill Schaefer as alternate for the Board of Zoning Appeals. Term expired 12/31/2022.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Very good.
Excuse me, the name again?
Bill Schaefer. And we will also have another alternate position that we will talk about some more that would be open that we may be interviewing for as well. We will talk about that at the next trustee meeting. Moving right along, and I am still on page 4. We have Tom Zabatny, who's an independent contractor for the Assistant Zoning Inspector 1 position. He handles all of our complaints. It is quite an endeavor. When you get his reports, you will see the details that he puts into that. We are currently paying him at a rate of $16 per hour, not to exceed 120 hours per quarter. Does anyone have anything to add to that? Do we want to increase that rate in any way?
Has there been a request?
There has not at this point. And if we look at the document I provided for you, it's a organizational meeting history of wages document. I created an Excel spreadsheet for the public. You can request this if you'd like. I will make sure that Suzanne has a copy of it. It is a history of our wages from 2018 to 2021. And if we look at the assistants, let's see. His position, he's been paid $15.50 since 2018, but he did get an increase to $16 an hour in 2021. Do you want to add anything to that, Suzanne?
No.
So is that something that we want to keep at $16 an hour?
I'm comfortable leaving it at $16 an hour. He just had an increase last year and he hasn't requested an increase.
Okay. Trustee Sweattick?
I'm okay with that.
Okay. So at this time, I don't even need to make a motion because we already did that. The Assistant Zoning Inspector 1 position at a rate of $15.50 per hour, not to exceed 60 hours per week. Are we comfortable with that motion?
Yeah.
I am.
Okay. And Tom Wilson as zoning inspector for the year of 2022 at a rate of, and this was supposed to be $1,400 per month. So I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to appoint Tom Wilson as zoning inspector for the year of 2022 at a rate of $1,400 per month, unless you would like to increase it. There was an error in those minutes. It was supposed to be $1,400 per month. We just increased Mr. Wilson's rate
By 500. That's why I had 500 on the mind.
Yeah, and that was back in October roughly, or
Yeah, October,
September?
November.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just
so we
very
just increased
recently.
that for him. So are you comfortable with the $1,400 per month?
Yes.
I am.
Very good. So can I get a second?
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
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 Martha, did you want to add something?
No, I was just going to say that that motion was made because of increase time in appeals and zoning commission, and he had to add an extra day. And when that motion was made, it was made to fluctuate with zoning, because he really did need to be in here 3 days a week rather than the 2 days that he was. So
Right.
just something to consider if zoning slows down again. Or Mr. Zablotny's hours increase, either or, one of those situations.
Very good. we've got a motion here for Suzanne Peterlin to be, she's currently compensated at $19.25 per hour, and we've been trying to keep her in the same wage bracket as Kumi over at the police station. I'm going to recommend a 3% raise for both of them, unless you have a different idea.
Do we expect the hours to increase now that Chris has left us?
That's a good question. Suzanne, can you answer that?
I would say it's dependent on the workload. To answer your question, perhaps there might be some hours that are necessary to complete a project.
With the possibility of increased hours and having to be here more, are you comfortable with the 3%?
She's already at 40 hours. She's full-time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are,
so this
are
would
you
become
comfortable with that?
Sure.
Have increases historically followed union contracts at all?
Just for the police. There are no other unions.
No, I'm saying when the police union negotiates a raise, does that increase trickle down at all?
No.
No. Okay.
One does not have anything to do with the other generally. What I'm finding in other townships is that they just do a percentage increase, whether they break it down, some break it down 2% merit, 1% cost of living expense, however you want to navigate it. But with the cost of living expenses skyrocketing as they are, I thought a 3% raise would be fair for most of our personnel. And for Suzanne, that means 57 cents more an hour.
I'd like to ask for input from Martha. You have any input on that, Martha?
a lot of it is dependent on whether or not you guys plan on hiring another administrative assistant. Because I can, again, there is an unlimited pot of money for administrative costs, and I just have to maintain a balance there. So, and if you're, you know, I think roughly last year it was, by look at recalling the W-2s for the two people that maintain that position through the course of the year, we're looking at $15,000 in wages plus then benefits on top of that, because they're eligible for OPERS, Medicare, and you know that. So again, you need to add those two together and balance them out and see what your budget will support.
So maybe we stay the course right now until we decide what that office is going to look like. Yes or no?
I'm comfortable with that suggestion, just because I'm sure Chris was putting in 15, 20 hours a week.
20 at least.
20 hours a week. So I would assume that that's going to be something we're going to need to replace a Chris for you, just to keep your head above water.
I would agree.
So you want to keep her right at the price point that she's at now with the $19.25 per hour. You don't want to look at a 1% or a 2% raise?
I would think that if we're going to be trying to replace Chris, this is going to be something that's going to be happening hopefully relatively soon, since she did just leave at the end of 2021. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So we'll have a hopefully much better idea of where we're going to be in another month or two.
Okay.
With flexibility and performance, I believe that there should be some sort of increase.
I agree. Suzanne is very dedicated to our township. She works harder than anyone you'll meet in this town, and really keeps all of the departments glued together.
And that would be, you said, 54 cents an hour with the 3%. So what would a 1%?
19 cents.
Okay.
Yeah, 19 cents.
I'm not opposed to wage increases. I'm just saying there has to be a balance, whether it be in your administrative assistant hours or something,
Well, that's
because
what I'm saying.
there's a
if
dollar
we
amount that you,
if we decide to get an administrative assistant and restrict those hours, then we can easily do an increase.
Exactly. Like I said, I'm not saying one way or the other what you need to do. I'm just saying there's an allocation of dollars that you need to squeeze two people into, and how you do that is your choice.
How is she paid? Is she paid from the cemetery or the zoning fund outside of the general fund?
She's paid up from all three at times,
Right.
depending on the revenue. I move it around.
Right.
But primarily the general fund and zoning. And I can move it around anytime I want according to payroll, depending on how many dollars are in there. But if you recall, we had to appropriate and create a new line just for the administrative assistant, just because of the requirement, whether it be due to increased zoning demands or increases in the Kimball contract. Obviously, that's been a big part of both the Chris's hours. So,
So in the
But
meantime.
I'm okay with the 3% as long as we have the understanding that if we do an administrative assistant, that those hours will be in check.
yeah, I mean, that Chris had, Chris was working 20 hours a week, correct? That's what I recall from her pay.
Well, I guess that's
Payroll
payroll sheet.
sheet.
Is that right now you're doing the job of, prior to Suzanne, 3 people were doing the job. She does alone. And now she's doing the job that Chris was doing as well. We're going to keep her at the 1925.
3 people were putting in the same number of hours that she was.
Suzanne has culminated 3 different positions.
How's that? I'm sorry. I mean, the sexton role. Are you talking about the sexton role?
Sexton role, she works with zoning frequently. She's the secretary. She's the assistant zoning inspector. If we need an inspector, she's fills so many roles.
Well, and that's been throughout her entire,
But
and Debbie
prior to
Magavec
Suzanne, there
before
were
her.
3 people in the office doing what she does.
At 3 times the hours that she puts
No,
in.
there
No.
wasn't. I'm sorry. There was an administrative, and I'm not disregarding Suzanne's contribution in any way, but there was, Suzanne took over for Judy Stupka, who did what Suzanne does, and then Judy left. Suzanne came in and did that role, and then Walter Robb passed away. So in order to make Suzanne full-time, Suzanne took on the role of the sexton, which was a $350 a month salaried position. And that's, so, Suzanne did take on that role in order to increase her hours so that she could be considered full-time and get the associated benefits. And zoning has increased dramatically, and the Kimball,
The Kimball is a very
the
big.
garbage in the Kimball. And that's, I think, why Chris Miller was, assumed all that, and then Chris Medwood. So again, like I said, I have no opposition to annual wage increases, but it's just a consideration that we, if there's other things we need to do, then you guys need to discuss wider personnel issues
And we will.
regarding
We will,
zoning.
but in the meantime, I think that Suzanne needs to be compensated at a higher rate. That's my opinion.
I'm not opposed to the 3% increase either. I mean, I have kind of a basic understanding of some of the things that Suzanne does. I think in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to get a much better understanding of everything that you do and how it's a well-oiled machine thanks to you. I'm not opposed to it. My concern would be is if we have to hire someone else, possibly at a higher rate than Chris was making, just to get someone in here, would we have to take some of that 3% back? And how would you feel at that? That would be my concern.
Well, that's why I was saying you even if you hire someone at a higher rate, if you're controlling the amount of hours that they're available, if you set it at a part-time position at X number of hours per week.
Well, and there's nothing that says that we have to hire an assistant for her. There are other models that Suzanne and I have been looking at. We've been going to other townships and looking at how they're modeling their administration and zoning departments. And there are other ways that we can navigate this. And I just hate to not give her a higher compensation in the meantime while we finagle what.
I'm fine with that. I would rather do that rather have.
So, I mean, and if you're not comfortable with the 3%, maybe we just say we, go up to, 1975 or 1950. You tell me what's best for you. But I believe
I think if Martha's saying that it will work with 3%, then I'm comfortable.
Well, we have a $6 million carryover right now.
But let's not.
I think we can afford 25 cents more per
I'm not
hour
going to
for
let that
Suzanne.
one go. $6 million, that is true. But as you know,
I
a
understand
lot of that is special
investment.
revenue, and
Right.
it is not general fund, and it is not zoning.
I understand, but we've got Suzanne who's doing the job of.
I'm not.
And I would like to see her at
Again, we're
least
all
get
in
a 25
support of
cent 25 cent per hour increase, if not a 50 cent per hour increase.
I don't think anyone's debating what she does and doesn't do. It's about the fiscal part of it.
I understand that.
So, like I said, I'm okay with 3%. If you are, as long as if we do an administrative position, assistant position again, that we control the amount of money that goes into that. Okay.
Yeah, we always will.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. So at this time, I'd like to make a motion to maintain, let's see, I'm on the wrong one. That the administrative office, nope, same wrong. Make a motion that the administrative office zoning office manager, Suzanne Peterlin, be compensated at a rate of, what do we say, 57 cents more?
Well, what are you doing? 3%? 3%. So just do 3% annual increase.
That at the 3% annual increase for 2022 to include the sexton role with a minimum of 35 hours per week.
Second. Oh,
Which one? We'll switch back and forth.
I defer.
All right. Second, Asherle.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Very good. Thank you. I'd like to make do we have any discussion on $15 per hour for the assistant to Suzanne? That was something that just increased in April with the hiring of Chris Miller. Maybe it was March. It was much lower than that. If you look at that spreadsheet that I gave you, I think we were at $12.25 an hour in 2020. So we bumped it to $15 per hour in 2021. Are we comfortable with keeping that the way it is?
I'm comfortable.
Administration is at the bottom of that
Yeah.
spreadsheet. Okay, so we will leave that as is. And are you comfortable with leaving the position of trustee meeting reporting secretary at a rate of $15 per hour?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we will leave that as is. So we're moving on to page 5 of 9. Unless anyone over here has any conversation they want to include about Graves and the changing of that pricing, or are we comfortable
I
with
do.
where we are? Okay.
Actually, since we have begun to begin to approve a few more non-resident burials in our cemeteries, I request the trustees determine a non-resident rate in that event, rather, because currently right now, if you guys approve a non-resident or the qualifications, they're still paying the $400 that a resident is paying. That's the fee structure we have in place.
Okay. And that doesn't matter which cemetery, it's just $400.
Right. And so when you guys are, an individual that applies for a grave site that is currently a non-resident, but was at some time, and you guys can approve that on a case-by-case basis, whether they can be buried in township cemetery. There is no rate for that site except our resident cost, which is $400.
So my question is, if we put a non-resident rate in here, then are we opening it to non-residents as well?
No, you say resident qualifications to be determined by the trustees at the time of purchase, and that if approved, that rate will be X.
And so what would you recommend be the non-resident rate?
I would say at least $600 or $700. Because that's what it was prior, approximately, Sue's correct? That's what it was prior to changing it. And the reason we did is because we were the lowest rate around anywhere. So we were, if not equal, we were in excess of residents versus non-residents who were applying for burials. And the issue with that is that, even $400, that's basically covering the crew's time, Mike's crew to come in there, and Suzanne's time as a sexton. And then you're not capturing any long-term costs in perpetuity for the grave site there. And we were, so I think at least in some way, you have to say you're doing your due diligence, that someone who's not going to be ever paying a dime in property taxes or local government funds, we're at least going to do our due diligence in capturing enough revenue to maintain that site in perpetuity.
Okay, I'm comfortable with 600 if that's a good number for you, or do you want to see it go?
I would like to double it. If we can help to save the residents some cost, I would rather do that. If some of that money helps that we're undercharging for the residents. So.
Well, I don't think it can be prohibitive. I mean.
But that's.
Yeah.
We're underpriced at 400. You said we're like lowest around.
No, back when we were selling to non-residents, we had a fee structure. I think it was like 700 or wasn't it?
It was
600. And so when people were going around looking where to get buried, they may not have even had any affiliation with Hinckley Township. It's just that, wow, you can get a burial plot in Hinckley Township for $600. In this entrance, an example would be a long-term resident that maybe moved out of state or in their advanced years moved to a retirement community in Cuyahoga County, but they would like to be buried in Hinckley Township, and they just had not bought the plot while they lived here, or their children or something. And so they have strong feelings about being buried in the township, but they're not considered a resident at the time. So this just provides a mechanism for those folks to make that decision if they'd like, but there should be an appropriate charge for that is slightly different than someone who's currently here or has paid taxes, property taxes. We don't get money in the cemetery for property taxes, but we do end up supporting the cemetery through general fund revenue, especially with the mowing and things like that. So it's just a way to balance that out, just a touch.
Okay, so Suzanne, do we have any inkling as to what other townships are charging for non-residents around the area?
No, I do.
Okay.
I have never walked there's 3 cemeteries in town, correct? I've never walked all of them, but they seem not large. How many plots do we have left?
I don't know that offhand. I'd have to count.
Okay.
There's quite a few at all 3 cemeteries, but it's lessening each year, obviously.
So if I want one, I should get one.
at the resident rate.
Get it now.
But it has happened where we've had, somebody bought plots for their whole family except for the children, and one of the children passed away, and they didn't live in town at the time, but they knew that they all wanted to be buried together. So, it has happened a lot this year, 2021, where we had to make special note for those people to allow them to come into Hinckley Township and be buried here. So fee structure, you're saying double, 800.
And you're saying 600. What if we meet in the middle at 700?
That's fine. So at this time, I'd like to make a motion to set the price of a grave site for the township residents at $400 and non-residents for $700. Designating cremation sites at Maple Hill Cemetery will be $250 per residence. Residence qualifications to be determined. Resident qualifications to be determined by the trustees at the time of purchase.
You know what, I'm going to have you change that because then you just opened it up to non-residents in that motion. So,
Qualifications. Okay, so can
Yeah.
I get a second as amended?
so resident qualifications determined by the trustees at the time of purchase, and if determined currently a non-resident.
I would just say
Correct.
resident and non-resident qualifications to be determined by the trustees at the time of purchase.
That means you're going to have to make a motion on every single application. So if you just say resident qualifications determined by the trustees at the time of purchase, and in the event that the applicant is not currently residing in the township and approved, the fee will be $700. And subsequently approved, the fee will be $700.
Okay.
That way you're not opening it up to, would you agree? You're not implicitly saying that non-residents can come here and buy a plot for $700.
That was my concern.
Okay.
So moved.
All right.
Chairman Augustine, would you like to consider increasing the cremation fee for the non-resident?
And what would you recommend for that? Do we want to double it? I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
Or do you just want to say that
Where is that
additional,
in here?
all fees will be increased by $300 in this event? Cremation and burial. Cremation and or burial. You could just take a lump number.
Yes.
Martha, in that first line, can you say price for grave site for township residents, 400, and for non-residents, it will be
No,
700 if approved?
you're not, then every application Suzanne gets will have to be approved. You know what? How about if I work on some language to
Okay.
send to you
We'll come
guys
back to
on
it.
this that will, or, whoever, we'll just kind of put it out there. We'll table this.
I do like
For
the
now.
idea of increasing it by $300 for all non-residents. The grave site and the cremation.
And maybe we can just add some, if it is determined that a former, basically that there is a tangent, there's a nexus between the application and this, because that it may be approved by the board and subsequently the charges will increase by X. But what I'm trying to prevent is people just calling Suzanne and saying, I walk Hinckley Lake every week and can I be, I love Hinckley and can I be buried in your cemetery for $700? That's what we're just going to try to simplify. I know that's a
Where
very,
people bargain shopping.
yeah, that's a terrible example, but
It happens, I'm sure.
you've heard some winners, haven't you, Suze?
All right, I will just highlight it to remind myself. That
Okay.
We'll come back to that. We'll table it. For
I'll
right
send
now.
some language prior to the next meeting.
Okay. And we're comfortable with the footers and all of the things that come with the next paragraph.
Yes.
And we've appointed Mr. Bahari as Stormwater Management Coordinator. Do we want to keep our unskilled to skilled temporary labor rates at a rate of $10 to $30 per hour? And the reason it was so low at 10 was because that we had a young high school student that would come in and help weed and mulch and things like that, and they would make $10 an hour. But it obviously bumps up to $30 an hour to assist with bigger items. The service department. Are you comfortable with
I am
that?
comfortable.
I'm comfortable.
Okay, so we'll leave that as is. And at this time, I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session to discuss wages and appointment of Chief Grossenbaugh
So moved, or second rather.
at 10:21. All in favor, say aye.
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 Perfect. We'll be back. Chief, would you like to come back with us? That would be great. Thank you. Wrong button.
Coffee.
I know, I was gonna say.
Yeah, that's gin working, yeah.
Boy, it's colder in
It
here.
is cold in here.
Phew.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn out of executive session at 11:39.
Second.
Can I have a roll call, please?
Asherle?
Yes.
Swedek?
Yes.
Augustine?
Yes. All right, and we are moving right along. I'd like to make a motion to appoint Justin Grossabaugh as fire chief for the year 2022 at an annual rate of $37,000.
There's no change in that, so
That's
that's still the
correct.
same motion from the other night.
I'd like to make a motion that this year's 2022 fireman's compensation will be increased by 3% for the assistant fire chief, firefighter, EMT basic. We keeping the cadet, sir?
Yes, we are.
And the administrative assistant. And that the firefighter EMT intermediate be increased to $16.75 per hour.
Second.
So was the cadet increased or did that?
No.
That stays at $14.35, so we're only increasing assistant fire chief, firefighter EMT basic, and administrative assistant 5%, and
You
the,
s- 3,
3%.
okay.
And the EMT intermediate will be $16.75. Did you get that?
Yeah, I got it, thank you.
Okay. And can I get a roll call, please?
Okay. Asherle?
Yes.
Swedek?
Yes.
Augustine?
Yes. I'd like to make a motion to modify a period of no less than 3 months for those members who, after the successful completion of their initial 3 months tenure, meet the following criteria. We should just say, and meet the following criteria, have at least 3 continuous years active service on a full-time fire department and have been employed in the capacity within the preceding 12-month period.
Second.
Can I get a roll call, please?
Are you going to do roll calls every time? Or,
Yeah, I do it every time. I was told I should do that. I
Okay,
had a little bird in the room.
okay. All right. Asherle?
Yes.
Swedek?
Yes.
Augustine?
Yes.
Do you have that written out?
I have it typed and I can send it to you.
Thank you.
And then the second one we'll just leave as is because we already made that motion, if you're in agreement.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And we're in agreement to keep the holiday pay as is set, as well as the uniform allowance.
Yes.
Okay. And the Ohio Fire Chiefs Association fees will be paid as determined there.
Yes.
We have no changes to our fees for calls of service. So I'm going to move on to page 7 of 9. Second paragraph down, and I'd like to make a motion that the mileage rate of $15 per mile be assessed to all non-residents and residents for EMS transport. The billing agent for these fees shall be Life Force Management, and all monies directly deposited by Life Force Management to the Township Fire Department Fund as per the contract between Life Force Management and Hinckley Township.
Second.
So you're amending, all these motions are amendments, correct?
Yeah, so this will be $15 per mile.
Okay.
Instead of 12. Is that
Correct.
correct?
And we're in agreement on that?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
And then can I get a roll call, please?
Monique?
Yes.
Jack?
Yes.
Melissa?
Yes. Okay, I'd like to make a motion to appoint David Setner as Chief of Police Department for the year 2022 at an annual salary of $92,000 with 5 weeks of vacation for 2022.
Second.
And can I get a roll call for that, please?
Monique?
Yes.
Jack?
Yes.
Melissa?
Yes. All right, moving on to Hinckley Police Department Compensation Chief Setner.
Yes, ma'am.
You have the floor.
I would ask that the same 3% that was given to Suzanne be given to the full-time administrative assistant, Kumi. I'm fine with leaving the part-time patrolman at $20 an hour and the part-time administrative support position at $18.50.
Okay, so at this time, I'd like to amend that motion to reflect a full-time administrative assistant increase of 3%.
Second.
Monique,
Yes.
Jack,
Yes.
Melissa.
Yes. Mr. Bahari, I'm going to make a motion to go in executive session, discuss wages and for the service department.
Second?
Can I get a roll call, please? And that's at 11:43.
Monique,
You can go.
Yes.
Jack,
Yes.
Melissa.
Yes. Both chiefs, unless you want to stay around for liaisonship discussions.
If you want us to, I mean, obviously we will.
We don't have much more to discuss after we talk about service. I will leave it up to you. Okay.
Hey, baby. The coffee's warm now.
Is it?
Yeah, that's how
Is
long.
Martha coming again?
If
I
you
would hope
guys
so.
ask me.
Why should join us, Martha?
Thank
Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn out of executive session at 12:22.
Second.
Resume our meeting. Can I have a roll call, please?
Monique?
Yes.
Jack?
Yes.
Melissa?
Yes. All righty. Moving on right along. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to accept the service department pay rates amend the service department pay rates as follows. Service superintendent at an hourly rate of $31 an hour with the use of a township vehicle to and from home. Service worker class 1 at $24.50 per hour. Service worker class 2 at $22.50 per hour.
Second.
And can I get a roll call, please?
Monique?
Yes.
Jack?
Yes.
Melissa?
Yes. And at this time, I'd like to rescind the motion to appoint Mike Maharby as a service superintendent for the year of 2022 at an annual salary of $61,800 with the use of a township vehicle to and from home.
Second.
And can I get a-
Monique?
Yes.
Jack?
Yes.
Melissa?
Yes. And we are going to move on to amend the motion that all full-time service department members shall receive a biannual $250 uniform allowance for $500 annually to be administered by the service superintendent and approved by the trustees.
Second.
Monique?
Yes.
Jack?
Yes.
Melissa?
Yes. Page 8 of 9. We briefly discussed this we had a conversation about the Eagle Scouts. Do we come to a quorum on that? I just couldn't recall, so I highlighted it.
We were saying
Just leave it be. That's all right. This meeting's been long enough.
It's a long meeting.
I'll just need a new motion for you guys to set the pay increases that were approved at this meeting to the next payroll.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Monique?
Yes.
Melissa?
Yes.
Sorry, Jack.
Yes.
That was a little out of order, but that's okay.
Sorry, I'm
That's
writing
okay.
and saying.
All right, the next conversation of the page 9 of 9 is liaisonships for 2022. Do you have any preferences? I could say that I would like to maintain police and fire. And I am amenable to keeping waste and recycling, although it's not my favorite. Yes.
On the previous page, first middle bottom, resolution for 2021 or 2022 for the purchase resolution.
I'll change that to 2022. Thank you.
I have it as 2022 on mine. Oh, I see where you are. Thank you. We will make that change. Okay. So do you want to discuss liaisonships?
I do. I would actually kind of like to do away with them. I would like that we all be involved in each of the departments.
Okay.
I think that's what the citizens would want. They didn't elect just one of us to sit over one department, and that's just my thought on the topic. I don't know how either of you feel, but I'd like to be involved in all the departments.
Okay. Well, just so you know, we are all involved in all the departments, no matter whether there's a liaisonship or not. I regularly have conversation with people that are not part of.
I understand that, but
liaisonships.
let's just talk about with fire, where a lot of what conversation occurred between the two of you, the crux of that, you boil it down, obviously, when you repeat it out, but each of the folks isn't involved in it directly. There could still be a point of contact. I understand that, but I would like, that we all have our hands in everything, if that's possible. That's my opinion.
I think my concern with it and why I would support kind of eliminating them is from the appearance of someone sitting in the audience for the last several years is it seemed to be there was not always that open, I don't know if I want to say communication or understanding amongst all three trustees when certain issues came up with different departments. And I feel like a lot of decisions, and I don't know if I want to say a lot, but some decisions were made kind of spur of the moment because there hadn't been communication prior.
Okay. The reason the liaisonships are in the organizational meeting is because the trustees before us have thought it's a great way of doing business here in the township. It is a way to handle the duties and equally divide them and give a point of contact for our personnel and the citizens of Hinckley Township. I can tell you that last week I worked 43 hours because everyone was calling me because they didn't know who the liaisons were. If we continue in a manner without liaisonships and we have a citizen that emails us, are they going to get 3 different responses? Are they going to call all 3 of us for a complaint about Kimball garbage? I just think that the liaisonships are a way to better define and separate duties for us internally.
I think I would like to know when people are emailing with questions about things. And I think it's very simple to just make sure we're hitting reply all so that we are all in communication. We see what the responses are instead of just responding to one person.
And that happens. Generally, when I respond to someone, I always will include the other trustees as copied. But to get 3 different responses is not going to benefit our township either.
No, but that's, I mean, you establish the initial point of contact, which kind of liaison,
Mm-hmm.
but there shouldn't be somebody sitting over each of the departments where this is my department. They deal with me, Mike comes to me, not either of you. He comes to me. It shouldn't be like that.
I think that Mike comes to all of us.
No, that was an example.
But I'm saying as an example that it's not just one person that Mike is talking to. I have had at least 5 conversations with Mike last week. And I think it causes confusion for our departments as to who they should contact if we don't have liaisonships. It's been this way for a very long time for many reasons. And it's been a good way of working in the township.
I think just because something has been one way does not mean that it should remain that way. And I think that we need to open ourselves up to different possibilities, maybe different structuring of it. That's where I would go with it.
So what would you recommend as a different structure?
Back in December, we attended a zoning, Trustee Cleanot met with both of the Toms, and Jack and I attended. And I think it was really important that we were both at that meeting because we were given the same information, but we both had different questions about, the same project. I thought of something that Trustee Swedick had not thought of, and he thought of things that I had not thought of. So I think that's where I'm coming from with this is these communications and these meetings should be all 3 of us at them, not just one person.
And then that makes a public meeting. So you're going to be meeting weekly.
If that's where we need to be, I think that's where we should be.
Public meetings weekly.
If that's where
Are there any other townships that you know of that work without a liaisonship?
I don't know.
Granger does not.
Granger does.
Well, the trustees, Rich Pace told me that they don't have liaisonships. So did you talk to
I
Rich?
just spoke with them in July at the county meeting that the prosecutor held, and they all had liaisonships.
Well, I think maybe it's maybe it's similar to a point of contact, but
Maybe we establish what
yeah.
a liaison
The county has
authority
them.
is.
Isn't Colleen a liaison? She has liaisonships as a commissioner.
I'm not certain.
I'm pretty sure she does.
You know what, and again, historically, the liaisonships have narrowed over the years, but some of that was, I think, partially due to the fact that work sessions were not held. So in streamlining meetings, when you had your work sessions, that provided opportunity for the department heads to bring something up and share it with the entire board. Now, it is nice not having 2 or 3 extra meetings, but even, and we had talked about maybe doing a work session type meeting before the regular trustee meeting, since everybody was already going to be here. And that way, then people at least were privy to maybe private conversations between a liaison and a trustee, or, that. But I do think that provided a little more opportunity to share one-on-one conversation or the topic with the board as a whole, rather than kind of at a meeting when you have so many other things, business things that you need to do. But it has not always been as narrow.
Well, and
as
to
it
be
has
frank,
been.
the reason it has become so structured is because we have not had the work sessions, but also because the township is spread thin on personnel, and the trustees are doing a lot more, I think, than they have in years past.
And I will disagree with that after having been here for 16 years.
Well,
I do think I bring a little bit
And
of
I'm not-
perspective
I'm
to
not-
that, Melissa.
I'm not being disrespectful
So,
to you at all.
well,
in any
yeah,
way, shape, or
but-
form. I'm just saying that there's so much more that's being done is with regard to grants. Our staff is very small here.
Again, we
sat
have
here-
been much smaller. I mean, I get your point, and you look at it from your perspective over the last 2 years and 2.5 years, prior your service prior to that, and I get it. But, talking within the context of your personal experience, which we all do, and some of us, our experiences go back a little farther, and we can look at it from a different perspective. And so we'll leave it at that. But it hasn't always been like this.
When was it not like this? When were there not liaisonships in Hinckley
I'm
Township?
not saying the liaisonships, but whereas when you are talking to one person and actually really developing policy and then choosing whether or not to share that with your other trustees in a larger discussion forum. Sometimes a lot to Monique's point, and I've noticed this too, whereas, and I don't think none of it's intentional, but it almost looks like things are sometimes rubber stamped, and maybe because meetings are long, or because maybe the trustee isn't familiar with it, they say, okay, we'll go with that because you assume, and the assumption is often not ever incorrect, I don't think, but that this whole thing has been vetted and discussed, and all the possibilities have been figured out. And so you have that element of trust. But the different trustees that I've served with on different boards, I've found there's a legitimate strength to working through a lot of those things as a group, because it brings the three of you, because it brings a lot of points and ideas and an evolution to a problem that doesn't always exist when it's less than.
And that's what we have always done. And that's what was primarily done in the work sessions. Why did the work sessions end?
Because it was difficult for some people to their work schedule and attending them. And I think it was just another meeting that the prior board, I think that was Jim and Becky and Ray, just decided that they could accomplish what they needed to do
I thought there was something about
absent the work
prosecutor
session.
saying that it was
No, they're a
officially
special meeting.
Yeah, it's a special meeting that we have to call.
Part of it was, if I may speak, part of it was we have to take minutes now on this. Every meeting is a meeting. whether we
Right.
like it or not.
Well, like I said, I'm not, I'm not doing handstands over another meeting. I don't think anybody is, but, if not that, then what? I don't know. Okay, you guys want to just,
Yeah, like I said, I would be okay if we define what a liaison relationship is, that, that's an initial point of contact, that, you take back and handle whatever you need to with that. Like you call Kimball if you have waste and you get an email like that and we're all copied on it. But I think it would best behoove us if we did that we established the work sessions again.
I agree.
So you bring that, what you're working on to the table then.
And that's fine if you want to establish a work session. It's going to take our guys off the roads because they've got to sit here. And oftentimes those go long like this meeting has. But I still believe in liaisonships completely.
And what do you see the role of that liaison?
They are the point of contact. If Chief Setner has a simple question for me, he can call me and I can answer it quite quickly. He can then call each one of you, but that's not an efficient and effective use of his time. There are small decisions that happen, and it's not every day, but it's often that they don't necessarily need a trustee permission, but they would just like to hear that they're heading in the right direction.
And then that is shared with the other trustees.
Absolutely. It's always shared with the other trustees, even if it's just a phone call for me to say, hey, I just wanted to let you know that Chief Setner's and I talked about it, and this is how we're going to proceed with this. And then if you have a problem with it, you can call Chief Setner, because all decisions have to be made publicly. So that's the problem, is that I understand invoking communication and working together collectively, but it has to be done publicly. So I can call you with questions and I can call you with updates. That's all I can call you with. And that's why the liaisonships are so important. Did you have something to add?
Yeah, if you want me to speak, I'll speak. I'll take the podium. On the record.
I thought you raised your hand. I saw the corner of my
No, I
eye. Oh, that's why I asked you.
No, I didn't. I didn't raise.
Did you, well, I mean,
I
if
do
you
have something to say, but I was
Sure.
at the end of the meeting, this would be appropriate if you wish. Thank you, Board.
You need a microphone.
216 Lakecrest Boulevard. Jen, if you can't hear me, let me know. I'll pick up a microphone. Got a microphone. So, in this point, thank you for serving. You're seeing how difficult some of these decisions are. This is just being one of them, where the budget is and such. But on the point of liaisonships, you're going to find this job is going to be taking a lot more time than maybe you anticipated. It certainly did for me. It wasn't because I was inefficient. It's because the number of things happening in the community during my term were immense. It was quite stressful trying to keep up, learning ORC, our policies, our resolutions, and you're going to find it being knowledgeable at every one of those for these three gentlemen here. It's difficult. You can do it, but you're going to be full-time. These three gentlemen were hired to make decisions, not for you to make the final decision unless they couldn't, it was over their ability to do so by our law and our regulations, right? So what you'd like them to do is make the decision and maybe bounce an idea off of the liaison. I have this idea, whatever it is, and that chief or that superintendent would use that. That the trustee would then share with the other two trustees. The chief has done this within their realm, within their abilities, within their legal right, and that's the way they're going. A good example would be a Kimball letter from a resident. I didn't want to have to deal with it, not because I was afraid to, but there's just too many people feeding back information to the community when the answer is either factual or not, right? So the liaisonships do give the residents a point of contact, and it does focus each one of you, and you can rotate your liaisonships through your term if you want to, but I do think it's important that you keep in mind the level of work that increases immensely if you're going to be taking responsibility for all three departments or all five departments, cemetery and stuff. And then lastly, to respect these gentlemen, it's going to be very difficult for them to have three bosses. Because basically that's what you're saying. There's nobody that they have to bounce an idea off of. They got to bounce off of all three of you. And it may be.
They do have three bosses though, Jim.
On things they don't. There's certain things that they're allowed to do without any decision at all. But they have an idea, the concept, something, hey, I'm thinking of patching up this culvert, and he's allowed to do it without the permission if it's within his realm of spending. He doesn't need three people telling him, yeah, go patch up the culvert. He could do it on his own, but he needs that point of contact for a project like that. Chief, I can't think of a specific example. Anytime there was anything big, he never closed the door to me. He always had an open door to me, as did Jess. I was a service superintendent for speaking to these three guys. So take on cemeteries. It's another thing. You guys really want to get into the legal ramifications of cemeteries? There's a lot going on there. You've got indigent burials. You've got non-resident policies. There's a lot, guys. You're going to be absorbing a whole lot of information, and it is going to do the public a disservice to try to share that. It's just going to be too difficult. Thank you.
I'm still confused as to why it can't be something so simple as sending an email. If a department head has send an email to all three of us or send a text message to all three of us. In terms of the liaisons,
You can't do that because then you're asking them for a decision, and then we're making a decision via text or via email, which is against sunshine laws.
in terms of the liaisons with residents reaching out to us, I doubt very highly that most of the residents know who the liaison is for each department. I doubt that every resident knows who the trustees even are. So I think that there's maybe more of a focus being put on the liaisons from this board than from the township perspective, from the residents' perspective.
I think that it varies. I think that I've been to homeowners associations where everybody in the room knew who the liaisons are and surprised me. And I've been to homeowners associations where nobody in the room knows who the liaisons are, and it surprised me. I think that as two new trustees coming in, you have a lot that you're going to be thrown your way. And I would recommend trying it for a year. And if you don't like it, we come back and look at the organizational meeting minutes again and change it. But I think that you're setting yourself up for at least 40 to 50 hour work weeks with the recommendation you're giving me today. Because you're going to have your hand in every pot all the time. And to me, it's a disservice to yourselves.
By that statement, I feel it's a disservice to the residents. If our hands are not in every pot, the residents did not elect Trustee Sweattick or myself to just manage over one aspect
I
of the
absolutely
township.
agree with that. And again, and also go back to what I said at the beginning, all of the trustees are involved in everything already. It's actually a public perspective that we only deal with our specific departments. I am regularly on the phone with Suzanne, regularly. I am regularly on the phone with Mike, even though I've been the liaison for police and fire. I have stood at the cemetery getting ready for somebody to be buried multiple occasions. I've done things that you can't even think of that all three trustees can't be at. So we have to make a decision to have a point of contact, and that's why it's in there, is so that we have someone. I remember running cemeteries. There was cremation. Melissa, you need to come up. Melissa, I can't be there, so you need to be there. How many times have I've been here checking Kimball trucks at 4:00 in the morning? I have done so many things that the public isn't aware of, and I'm just letting you know that all three trustees can't be at all of those things. That's a public meeting then. And that's the reason primarily for the liaisonships, is so that we abide by sunshine laws. So if you say to me, I'm going to be involved in every single aspect, then you're going to be standing at the cemetery, you're going to be looking at the Kimball trucks, you're going to be doing all the things, but it's going to be all three of us, and that's a meeting. And we would have to then create a special meeting for every single instance that all three of us would be together.
Well, I then go back to Jack's initial point of let's define a liaison.
A liaison is a point of contact. It's the primary
simple as
point
that.
of contact. Absolutely.
So then, anything you do as liaison will establish work session. I would like to do that. Yes, no? And then we bring that to the table there and discuss whatever has happened, has transpired. And then anything that's in more depth with that department, we bring them in or have a meeting with them separately as well.
Okay.
Okay?
So work sessions on the weeks that we don't have meetings.
I don't think it would hurt to have the work session before the meeting as well.
So 4 work sessions a month.
Not- As well, in addition to,
Pardon?
like, have a work session every week?
I think starting off,
How were they before, Martha?
They were every other week that we didn't have a meeting, a public meeting.
They were held in the morning.
They were held in the morning. They were
Well,
Tuesday
it
morning at 9
varied. It
o'clock.
varied according to schedule. It varied according to schedule over the years. We need, like when Ray was working, we accommodated his schedule, or we would have one in the morning, and when we switched, I think, to accommodate the department heads so they wouldn't have to come in for another meeting.
Well, I know when I became chief, it was Becky, Ray, and Jim. And most of our work sessions were in the evening.
Yeah, that was to
Becky's
accommodate
schedule.
Becky.
So then they were done away with. So they were obviously off week Tuesday evenings.
It varied.
So
There was no prescribed. It just,
I would say, and again, I like the work sessions from my perspective because it gave us an opportunity to go through a lot of things.
Chief, I'm sorry. Can you turn your microphone on? I could barely hear you. Thank you.
It gave us an opportunity to go through a lot of things ahead of time, and which made meetings shorter. But it was difficult at times that every Tuesday evening I was back in Hinckley Township again for a meeting. So my only request would be, if we're going to go back to work sessions, is that we consider doing them during the day if feasible.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
I think that's fair.
And again, and this isn't your full-time job, so, we will have to take that into consideration, I would think, at some point. But that would be my request, is that we do them on a Tuesday morning and on the off weeks, because we're all here. So, but they were helpful. There's no question as far as the dissemination of information and everyone being on the same page, they were very helpful. So I will tell you that it would be easier for me to have a point of contact, because then, and again, I work for the 3 of you in this community, and my phone is always on. Most of the time will always answer it, or I will call you right back. So I work for all 3 of you, and call, stop by, have coffee. I mean, the door's always open, the phone's always on. So I think the work sessions, at least initially, would be helpful. My only request again is that if we could facilitate them during the day on those off Tuesdays, that would be, beneficial to, I think, the department heads.
And I agree with that. I liked the work sessions on Tuesday mornings alternating from the meetings back in 2017. They were lengthy. They lasted quite a time, sometimes 3-4 hours. Right, Susan?
I will tell you, I think the idea of having a work session before a regular meeting, I don't know that I like that idea, and I'll tell you why. Because if I'm bringing something up that maybe you want to think about, or you may develop more questions, either we have to table that for 2 more weeks, or you're forced to make a decision that maybe you have questions about that maybe I can't answer. Maybe you bring up a question that I don't have a real good answer for at the moment. So I think if we have them on alternating Tuesdays, there's a time frame for everyone to digest what we're talking about, what we want to do, and so forth.
I agree. I think it's just an extension of the initial meeting, if it's right before.
Regardless, I'm just going to be here an hour and a half earlier.
Right.
So I would rather be here Tuesday, every off Tuesday,
Right.
while I'm here.
And it afforded us as trustees an opportunity, at least a week's opportunity, to put everything in alignment for that meeting. So if one of the trustees had a question for us that we didn't have a response to, we had the time and the ability to get it done for the next meeting.
Okay, do you have to hold a work session? If we say we're having work sessions, can we make the decision that nobody has anything for this week and we don't hold it?
Well, it would have to be a special meeting. That would be, Suzanne would have to advertise. And so, yes, we could say that this week is
Been canceled?
right.
Okay. In the interest of not wasting people's time if they don't have
That's a
to.
big variable.
Yeah.
Because you're paying them to sit here.
Yeah. Okay, with that being said,
So we're going to move forward with them. I would propose that they kind of split up how they currently are. I know that Trustee Augustine has said she wishes to remain with fire and police. I would think, as you are now a member of the Medina County Planning Commission, zoning is a better fit, as it was for Trustee Polina.
Trustee Kalina and I, and actually several fire chiefs and I have had this conversation that, and one of the reasons why I threw my name in that hat for the Planning Commission was because fire actually goes a lot with zoning, and it's one of the things that is often overlooked, which is why I wanted to go in with that expertise. I really am pretty solid at staying with police and fire.
I would like to see fire and police maybe split up between administrative office, zoning, cemeteries, waste and recycling. For instance, myself taking fire and administrative office and waste and recycling.
I'm not giving up fire, so I'm just not. I'm in the middle of modeling this department as to the way it should be for 2025 and beyond. I've been working really diligently on that. I've been running both departments, police and fire, in the middle of a pandemic and created the pandemic response plan. I've had contacts at the county and all over the township that are specific to that. And with the spikes that we're seeing, I would think that putting that department in someone else's hands is probably not the right move right now. Further, we're already going through a large transition here, and everyone is feeling it. And I would hate to have all of our departments transition when police and fire are so paramount in this township. I would think that if we can maintain at least two departments and transition others, that would be the most ideal.
I feel that goes against what we just said with it being simply a point of contact. We're going to be having the working meetings, the work sessions every other week.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel that your statement goes against what we just said, that it is simply a point of contact.
It's a point of contact that already knows the workings and operations. It doesn't make sense to change that point of contact right now with the additional transition that's happening.
Right, but what you just said is you've established this and that, the other thing, you've created this, you've created that. That's not a point of contact. That's actually like running a department.
Yes, but I've been the point of contact, so why would we change that? We're changing so many other things.
I
but
feel
that, to Monique's point, it wouldn't change. You would still be part of that. She would just be the point of contact at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And then we would all be making decisions on what changes are made to the department. Not an individual working on that and then bringing it back to us.
I understand that completely. And I understand that you want to invoke change and that you want to learn how this system is run. And I completely support that. I completely support that for every citizen that lives in Hinckley Township. I have been the point of contact for police and fire, and I would like to keep those two departments as point of contact.
I feel you would be better utilized as the zoning liaison with your new role for a point
It's
of
a
contact.
brand new role that I'm still learning. I haven't even been to a meeting.
And we,
So
and we all are.
it's
So
really, the planning commission really isn't a variable.
that is my opinion.
Well, I have to say, Trustee Astral, that when you were running, you spoke eminently about zoning, and you spoke about all of the fantastic changes that you would like to see in zoning. And I think it's a disservice to the township and the people and the citizens that live here if you don't come in and try to at least attempt to do that.
I'm going to be attending all of the zoning
I think
meetings.
you should be the point of contact for zoning.
And being the point of contact makes, like we've just said, it makes no difference. It's just the point of contact. We're still all going to be
Very
equally
good.
involved.
Absolutely.
So that is where I feel you will have all of those contacts because of the Medina County Planning Commission and the zoning, and you've been around for over 2 years at this point. I feel you are a better fit.
I don't agree with you. And of your 7 videos, 5 of them were about zoning. So I think that that is the direction that I'm most confident that you will serve best in as point of contact.
I am not debating what I said, and I will be very active in the zoning.
Terrific.
I think that all 3 of us should be extremely active
As was the
in the
last
zoning.
board.
So we have difference of opinion. So Jack, what do you think?
Notwithstanding your involvement, again, that doesn't change. It just becomes a point of contact. And I don't think there's a reason that it shouldn't change hands occasionally. I mean,
I agree with you, but this township is going through a big transition with 2 brand new trustees, and to transition all of these departments and change the point of contact for all of them is going to be quite confusing. I think that if we can limit that for our township, it serves to better us as a whole. And I'm happy to keep waste to recycling as well. I know the contacts at Kimball for that. And actually have already had conversation with them to let them know that if liaisonship changed, I would be sure to contact them and update with them with the appropriate information. There are points of contacts for all of these departments for a reason. And if we get complaints about Kimball, I'll be sure to make sure I copy you on all the emails so that you're seeing them, as I have done last week.
That is how I feel. I think if you want to proceed with them, we can switch some things up from how they've done in the past. Essentially, what you're saying is there's massive change happening across the boards, but then the only changes that are felt here with the liaisons is buildings, parks, and services, or administrative office, zoning, cemeteries, waste, and recycling, not to fire and police. I feel that they can be split up. Just because they've been this way does not mean they need to stay this way.
I don't disagree with you. They've been split up in the past. I'm telling you that I'm not splitting them. I'm not comfortable with that. And
you
it's
can't just say that.
I'm just
sorry.
telling, I'm not comfortable with it.
Yeah.
I think the township is going through a lot of big transition. And I think it's, you are understanding where it's being felt because you are brand new and you haven't been getting the phone calls that I've been getting. And this is one of the biggest things that I've gotten phone calls about. Who's the liaison? And I said, I don't know yet. I don't know yet. I don't know yet. We've got board members that are trying to figure out who to contact. We've got personnel that are trying to figure out who to contact, and they don't know yet. So that's why I worked 43 hours last week. This point of contact is important, and we're already transitioning as it is to transition these points of contacts for these departments seems ridiculous to me when everything else is
They're all going to have to be transferred anyways, because as you have already said, they don't know who the liaison is. So they all already have to be transitioned anyways.
So why would we do more when we could do less?
How do you see it as being more? Just because yours is not changing?
Correct. If mine was to stay the same, that would at least give some tendency and balance to this situation.
But by moving fire over, it doesn't pull you out of the equation.
I know
You're
that.
still, okay. So just let her be the point of contact for that and pick up one of the other ones.
I
Then I'll
agree
take
with
building
that.
parks and service.
I don't agree with that.
So guys, we could be sitting here for the next hour, going back and
We
forth.
could.
So what happens at this point is that Melissa can make a motion and have a vote and move on. Or someone else can make a motion in any way, shape, or form you guys want. But I don't think we're going to get anywhere sitting here saying same thing over and over again.
What did you want, Trustee Astral?
Fire and administrative office and waste and recycling.
And then Trustee Sweattick.
Building parks and service.
So who's going to take zoning and cemeteries?
You.
Police, zoning, and cemeteries. So the administrative office and the waste recycling are
Wasn't cemeteries kind of moved over to service just because of the logical
yes.
fit?
Except that Suzanne is the sexton, so she's often working on it. So it had gone with administrative offices for some time as well. Well, it's actually not a motion, Martha. It's just an agreement.
You do have to make it, well, are you agreeing? I think because it's contentious that it would be wise to have a verbal consensus on this. I guess, I don't know. I'm just suggesting something to get us off of where,
Okay, this time I'd like to make a motion that Trustee Sweattick will be the liaison for buildings, parks, and services. Trustee Astral will be the liaison for administrative office, zoning, and cemeteries. And Trustee Augustine will be the liaison for fire, police, and waste and recycling. It's never been a motion before.
it doesn't have to be a motion,
understand.
guys. I'm just saying, you gotta come to some verbal consensus on this. And I think maybe the best way is to do a motion.
Gotcha. Yes.
Just as an opportunity for consideration with the point that was made earlier, there's two components with the cemetery responsibilities, one being the administration portion with the sale and the working with the funeral homes for setting up the burials and such. But the other component, which is probably a little bit more large, is the support from our service department. I know that it worked out very well with communicating with former trustee Burns when there was cemetery projects or work with the service department. There was more continuity with getting things moving. So I would ask that you consider putting cemeteries and service together
Okay.
as a point of contact.
I agree with that. Worked out well.
You know, and guys, maybe instead of liaison, maybe you should call it a point of contact. If you want it more clearly defined,
It's the same definition,
Then-
isn't it?
well, again, but point of contact is what it implies. Liaisonship is an infrequently used term. It's just a suggestion, but if you're talking about defining something, then be literal.
So the liaison by definition is communication or cooperation with this.
Again, I'm
Which
not
facilitates a
debating the
close working
Webster's
relationship.
definition.
But
I'm
it's
just
the
saying.
same thing, the point of contact.
I
is a liaison.
understand. Okay, never mind.
Well, then I think we should table it because I am not in agreement. And I've given much consideration to this and.
I don't think, just because of what you said has occurred, that we need to determine what the point of contacts will be so that you're not sitting on the phone nonstop. So I would say we should entertain a motion.
Well, it's, like I said, it's really not a motion. I just gave a motion. I can amend it so that Jack would do buildings, park services, cemeteries. I would do fire, police, waste and recycling. And Monique would do administrative office and zoning.
So Melissa, your motion failed for a lack of a second.
I understand.
Okay, so that's how that one's gonna go. So if you wanna,
I would like to make a motion appointing trustee Sweattick to the liaison to buildings, parks, and cemeteries, trustee Augustine to zoning and police, and trustee Asherle to waste and recycling, administrative office, and fire.
I would second that.
Asher,
Yes.
Swidek,
Yes.
Augustine.
No. This time I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the special meeting at 1:09 PM.
Second.
Asher,
Yes.
Swidek,
Yes.
Augustine.
Yes.